start telling the boys about it. They used to gather in this pool hall at Jimmy Huntington's pan and pole, and the boys would talk about what they did today or what they're going to do tomorrow and all that, and Grandpa Chiefin would say, "That's not right. That's not right." He say, "You're not supposed to say, especially while girls and women are listening. You're not supposed to say what you're going to do when you hunt that animal." And he said the same thing. When he grew up, all he heard was, "I'm going to look for porcupine track. I'm going to look for chicken." It's a belief that we like to see go on, to make us elders feel good. Because everything what it's not only our young people, it's non-natives too. When they say things wrong, then it hurts.
Raven's Story is brought to you through a partnership of KIYU, Catherine and Stephen Attla, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Hi, I'm Mike Spindler, your host for Raven's Story. In this chapter, Catherine Attla of Huslia answered my questions about bears. The expert hunters, the ones that knew the most about hunting bears, did they have a whole set of bear dens that they knew about that every year were used so that if times were tough or there was not much moose around, or they really needed to find some meat, they had a few places that they could check that they pretty much knew that there would be bear there, that they could rely on?
It's a more like, I would say, gambling. You're never sure where it's gonna be. It might, but I think Stephen would cover this more, but I would. And like somebody will find there's always a new bear den that nobody knows about. It's just new. Okay. Around Huslia, I hear the men's talk, Grandpa Olin's bear hole, Happy's bear hole, Jimmy's bear hole, all different family, Sammy's. And because the person that finds the new bear den first, he's not going to keep it. He can let anybody, he'll share it. He'll let anybody check it. And that's the way it goes. Your name is there, but that doesn't mean only you could check it. Anybody could.
Because you were able to get them out of their dens in the fall time and in the early winter, was that an important source of food before moose were very common?
Yes. The reason they take them out of den, and they used to do that all the time, that's when it's the best meat. It go in den without eating anymore. Summertime, it eat lot of greens. It eat anything on earth, really, seem like. And they don't take them as much. But when there was no freezer, I remember when Stephen have a good story about this one guy that used to go out maybe once a week or 2 weeks and get a bear. Boy, everybody in camp was happy. They're going to have a meat. But not to keep. And it's hard to keep anyway in the summer. They have to use it up. And the reason it's hard to find, that's another thing, in the den. It's just like trying to find a needle in the hay pile. That's the way it is. And so that's why they're so careful with the animal. If you get out of luck, then you'll never find that needle. And must be springtime too, but bears are pretty bad on calves. We see that a lot when we travel around in the spring when the calves are small. A lot of times we see cow with 2 calves, and next time we go around it's all alone. And that have to be wolf or bear.
And most of what we've seen in our studies is that bears kill the moose calves mostly. And
that's the way we see it when we travel around in the spring.
Raven's Story is brought to you through a partnership of KIYU, Catherine and Stephen Attla, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Hi, I'm Mike Spindler, your host for Raven's Story. In this chapter, Catherine Attla answered my questions about trapping around Huslia.
Ever since I remember, not so much otter and marten and mink, other animal, are not shared like beaver. It's because you know where the beaver is. There's no doubt about it. And mink, you don't know where there's lots, or you don't know if it's going to be lots. And right in the fall, you know where the beaver house are there, in one place. And I guess that's the reason they share it, and people still do that. Well, Stephen, he's not going to trap around town. He leave that for people that can't go out far, and young people that their parents or their mother or father is still living, that had trapped that beaver house. And he have to go way out his camp. He always do that because he believe that you're supposed to share. And I never saw him trap around town. There's once or twice we trapped a couple beaver house in the Long Lake, maybe. Like last fall, when beaver season opened, there was going to be potlatch for Jacob, and I said, you should try to get beaver. There's a lot of beaver up the Long Lake. And he said, no, there's some people that can't go far. And so he didn't trap it. So I know he's always thinking like that. And pretty much everybody is like that. They learn to share, and that's the way it should be. Like, for instance, in Huslia, you go north on the Vents trap line. That's all the Vents. Started from my stepfather, Bobby Vent. And then there's Stockley, and that's the Byfelds. And there's in between Henry's, that starts from Benjamin Henry really long time ago, and Chief Henry. And then there's a little bit of Vents, and beyond is Huntington's.
That's up towards the Hog River?
Hog River. And then you go towards Hughes, all the way up to, I would say halfway, that's 50 miles, Upper Cabin. All that flat belongs to the Atlas. Then from there down is Sammy, all the Sams. And then from there down again is the Simons. And all around Huslia is the Rendafs. So
Huslia River or around Huslia Village?
Village, around the village. That's why there's Richard Slough, Richard Spring Camp, Richard's Eddy. Now we got to change this. We were talking about it. We're not supposed to mention who passed on. We're not supposed to mention their name. So we try to change it to Paul's Spring Camp and Paul's Slough. And Paul's Eddy. We try to tell people that. So that comes back. There's the Rendaf, and there's Olin. Jocelyn have little trap line there. So that takes, all around.
What about up Huslia River, New Litna?
That's
Billy Hawk?
That's Vince. Yeah. Around Billy Hawk is the Wild, from beyond Vince. There's Marks too. There's Vince and Marks and the Wild, all out in Huslia River.
Are there ever any times when one trapper's not going to use their area, and so someone else can, so to speak, borrow it or get permission to use it?
Never did.
They just let it rest.
It's all family. There's always someone from family. Like my stepfather, he can't do nothing no more, so his boys is using it, and his grandchildren's, like Ricky, he goes out that way. Vent, that's from Freddie.
With the price of fur now so low, has there been a lot less trapping activity around Huslia in the last few years?
Yes, because you have to have money to pay for the gas to go out trapping. And I think a lot of times young people are interested, but there's no way to get enough gas to. And the fur is not going to pay for it. Like when me and Stephen went out 2 nights up to Upper Cabin to trap muskrat, and we caught 8, and I don't think that's even enough to pay for 1 can. And I forgot how much he said we burned. And but we do it because of our traditional lifestyle.
Back in the days of dog teams, the dogs didn't cost you that much money, but it took a lot of time to get the food to feed the dogs.
That's true. And those days, person would go out, especially beaver trapping, all fall time too. But beaver trapping, people would stay out with their family for 2 months. And maybe the men would go back for more grocery from store and for dog feed.
So the whole family would be out on the trap line?
Yeah, well, in Cutoff, That's when I learned a lot about how they used to do things long time ago when they were out, and what they used for rabbit. And there's 3 different ways to set snares for rabbit that I know. One, really long time ago, I think the last one that used to snare rabbit like that is my mother-in-law, late mother-in-law. That's Eliza Attla. That's when I heard about how to use the sinew for rabbit and for chicken, ptarmigan. And then I started to see them use fish twine for ptarmigans, because there's no rabbit snares and cut off. Everything they run out.
Raven's Story is brought to you through a partnership of KIYU, Catherine and Stephen Attla, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Hi, I'm Mike Spindler, your host for Raven's Story. In this chapter, Catherine Attla of Huslia told me about what life was like many years ago when times were tough.
Well, I'll tell you one thing about the old village. I remember one time we had 2 little stores, but that didn't help as much as the other places like KIYU. I know the traders there had everything, pretty much everything. And in Cutoff we had 2 traders. That's just food, not very much clothing. And then later on there was just one, and it was good trapping at the time. And they always just about bought out a trader, and there's nothing. Now, that's when we were kids back in early 30s. And in 30s, I remember we have our last candy during the Christmas and New Year's until June. That's when boat come. And the eggs we have in the fall with the last boat till it's gone. Potatoes, same way. Onion. So we go without those things all winter long. And there's shells, but they were so little that they buy them. People that could go down Yukon, down to KIYU or up to Hughes, they can help their family by getting enough ammunition and different things, guns, canvas for canoe. We couldn't get that in Cutoff. And so we were pretty isolated. And that's when I learned a lot about how they used to do things long time ago when they were out, and what they used for rabbit. And there's 3 different ways to set snares for rabbit that I know. One, really long time ago, I think the last one that used to snare rabbit like that is my mother-in-law, late mother-in-law. That's Eliza Attla. that's when I heard about how to use the sinew for rabbit and for chicken, ptarmigan. And then I started to see them use fish twine for ptarmigans, because there's no rabbit snares and cut off. Everything they run out. In summertime, we lived without store. The last store we seen was in June. We go down Kaikook and we see store there, and when we go back, the traders go down Yukon for the summer.
Oh, the traders close their stores for the summer?
For the summer. And there's, I seen some people run out of lard, and there's no way to get grease. It was too early for pike and whitefish. You can't get nothing out of salmon. And they use dry flour to bake their biscuits. And so I seen a very little of hard time. I wouldn't see a lot, because it sounded like it was really tough long time ago. But there was a tough people too, so they survived. Well, in Cutoff, we had no school anyway, because I hear a lot of my friends that's my age say, we had school in our village, but my parents had to go out to make living, and I didn't. They took me out of school. A lot of them say that. So they say they didn't learn that much. And in Old Village we had no church, no post office, and no school. Just a little trading post, that's all. And at one time I counted 5 people that went to school that could write. Most of the time there's about 4 that could write.
So the school and the church and the post office came after the village moved to the new site?
Yeah, 1947. That's when post office, we finally got post office, and the same year some priests came, preachers. And then in 1949 we moved. In 1950 school opened in Coostia. The teachers feel sorry for us, I guess, and they started half night school. That's the first time I seen classroom. Maybe 1 hour twice a week.
They had night school for the adult?
Because we all didn't know how to write or read. And that's where I started pick up.
And do you remember how old you were then when you first started to try and learn to read and write?
About 30 maybe.
Was it pretty hard?
Well, I know a little bit, and they go from where we stand, like first grade or something. And I taught myself a little bit, and I was just learning to speak English. I had a hard time with name of animal. I mean, birds especially. I didn't know a lot of birds in English, and I didn't know a lot of people's name in English. I knew their, like, especially from Nolado. I know all those old people, and I know them by Indian name. That's what my grandparents used. After I grew up, I started trade with this one old lady. She was a good friend of my grandmother, and she would buy me beads, and I would give her something, and I started to send her something, and I didn't know the name. I know her in Indian. So I had problem with names in English. There's some birds I still don't know. If I hear it, I forget.
You recognize their voice out in the wild, but you don't know their
Right,
English
I know
name.
what they're saying.
Yeah.
I know what they're saying for sure, and I know the story behind all the saying.
Raven's Story is brought to you through a partnership of KIYU, Catherine and Stephen Attla, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Hi, I'm Mike Spindler, your host for Raven's Story. In this chapter, Catherine Attla of Huslia told me about some things she uses to help forecast the weather.
And they say, well, it's going to snow. And just like I know it too, because I heard that so many times in my life from my grandparents and other people, that it see the weather. The birds see the weather ahead. And all this time we never see geese in Huslia, very little. In fact, I never see nothing yet, and Stephen too. And now this morning it's snowing. And just like we know it, about a week ahead of time. Well, first we were down Kaikuk for a funeral, the Yaska's funeral, and we were flying home. And I tell Stephen, look at the sundark. So when we got home, Stephen said, it's going to turn cold. Gee, that's too bad. And sure enough, when we started trap beaver, it was so cold. The minute we set the trap in the muskrat house, it just freeze. It just got to come out right now for us to catch it. And then about a week ago, well, geese never come, and Stephen keeps saying, you know, that the other day I saw that sundark when I was up the flat. And he said, that's to come yet. So just like we know it's going to snow, it's going to turn cold before the spring begin again. And a lot of people, when their air ring, that's cloudy. Stephen is like that.
When their ear rings, it's cloudy outside?
Yes, and since he have heart attacks, he had 2 heart attacks, and the health aide would ask him, especially when Rose was health aide, your ears ring? And Stephen said, no. And we go home and I tell him, you're supposed to tell them when your ears ring, that means you try to faint. You try to black out or something. There's something wrong. That's my weather report. You don't have to bother that, he said. So he really believed in it. And that he's not only one. A lot of people do that.
So when the ears ring, it means it's cloudy and going to storm?
Mm-hmm.
And then when there's a sundog, it means it's going to get cold?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And when there's ring around moon at night, and that means snow.
It means it's going to snow.
Mm-hmm. But springtime we can't say it because it's almost daylight all the time.
You won't see the moon very much.
And that asks for lotchy snow, deep snow. Yeah, when it do that. And springtime, what we used to look for when we were hunting muskrat was you hunt all evening. You always start around 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock. You eat dinner right away, and then you go out for the rest of the evening. And when sun is going down, and it's bright sunshine, you know, really looks good. Oh boy, it's going to be sunny tomorrow. That means they call that sun look back for tomorrow. It's going to come good again. And people